Well, it's almost Tory conference time, and that means possibly, things could get messy. I hope they do. I really hope they do. I hope they do. I've got everything crossed in the hopes that it all kicks off at the Tory conference, that they start ripping chunks out of each other, that they go after each other, that they start briefing against each other and dropping secret dossiers against each other. We can, of course, live in hope that that may be very, very much the case. But if you were to really look at the Conservative Party as it stands right now, it is an absolute mess. You have candidates currently standing who should be absolutely nowhere near being selected as leader of the opposition, let alone like the UK Conservative Party. Robert Jerrick, of course, as we've talked about before, bizarrely being the front runner in all this. The man who was dubbed by his own fellow MPs as Generic Jerrick. You've got Kimmy Badenoch, who certainly will be entertaining for me from a content perspective. However, I don't think the Conservatives will put up with her shenanigans for too long, to be honest, especially when they realize, oh, actually, she's making us look bad to the entire rest of the voting public. Not going to last very too much longer. James Cleverly, a man who is far too close, quite frankly, to every single Conservative administration, going all the way back to Boris Johnson. And then Tom Tugendhat, who maybe at one time had maybe the potential to restore some sort of sanity in the party. Really, his campaign has shown no, he has been drinking the Kool-Aid and has now insisted that we can leave the the European Court of Human Rights, but we can leave certain parts of it, so we'll be fine. However, he hasn't explained how that has happened or what mechanisms he's going to use or anything like that whatsoever. So, fun times for him. But interesting question that Will Atkinson has asked today, and I've said this many, many times. By the time we get to the next general election in 2029, whoever is elected will not be the Tory leader that takes the Tories into the 2029 general election. I will be shocked because I think there will be at least 2 or even 3 Tory leadership contests by the time we get to the 2029 general election. Yeah, and of course, what happens? Will Atkinson has asked this very question. How do we avoid having to do this all over again in 2 years' time? All of a sudden, the nightmares of like all these Tory commentators, some of them have realized just how bad their candidates are, just how bad the state of the party is, the fact that they really haven't learned any substantial lessons from their last stint in 14 years in power from the defeat at the general election. They have learned nothing. If you've listened to any of what the potential leadership candidates have been saying for the past couple of months, they've learned nothing whatsoever. And they are going to continue basically just going down the road of, oh, see, everything fine. Yeah, we were right. Really? If you were right, why did you lose so badly? Oh boy. So anyway, we're going to go diving into this because, yeah, Will's just suddenly realized how terrifying that they might even be doing this in 2 years' time. I think maybe he's maybe even sooner than that, but we'll see. So before we do get into this, please do remember, click on the like, click on the share, click on the subscribe button if you are new. There's the Patreon page down below. There's the Buy Me Coffee link. There's the YouTube thank you button. And of course, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So thank you very much to everyone who does support the channel that way. And let's crack on then into this. So this is from Conservative Home of how can we avoid having to do this all over again in 2 years' time from our favorite T-boy, Will Atkinson. So Since 2005, the Conservative Party has had 5 leaders. Of those 5, they only lasted more than 10 years. So only one lasted more than 10 years. 2 have barely lasted more than 3 years, and Rishi Sunak by a whisker. He will have made it to little over just 2, and his tenure is still about 15 times the length of his predecessor. The next, obviously, election is likely now 4 years away. 5 if Keir Starmer's ratings remain in their current spin. How likely is it, of course, the next Tory leader to actually make it that far? Not very, if we're honest. If you think of this ludicrous question to be asked is a ludicrous question to be asking now, speak to Ian Duncan Smith or even Starmer, who considered resigning after the Labour's spectacular loss in the Hartlepool by-election, or even William Hague, who should have done. As we prepare for the party conference, basking in the expectation of a beauty pageant comparable to 1936 and 2005, oh, it's not going to be a beauty pageant. I'm hoping it's going to be an absolute, Royal Rumble slobber knocker. I hope it gets absolutely vicious because content from it would be amazing. So we should not blind ourselves to the potential that we could have to do this, the great leadership election jamboree, again in 2 or so years. That is a scenario that every rational Tory member should view with dread unless they hanker for another coronation. So they know that if they go into another leadership election, it's going to look really bad. But look at the state of the Tory party. They are bound to go into that again. Yes, they are all, quote, in peace, but it has not settled any arguments. There is no, settled ideology or this is what we're going to do, or anybody saying, this is the new policy we're going to follow. No, it's as if they are continuing. Many of these people are continuing just as if the loss at the recent election was just a minor inconvenience when it wasn't. But there you go. That's the Tory party for you currently. So with a government now that is eminently beatable, as this one, again, good luck to that. Any time spent indulging in more Tory televanella is wasted. That is true for being in an opposition as it was in government. The stakes may be lower, but no winner in a leadership push becomes prime minister by default, after all. But the truth of hanging together or even falling together is just as true. We cannot afford civil wars. You're already in a civil war, Will. The idea that the Tory party is not in a full-on civil war at this moment in time, yeah, not true at all. It is a civil war. They are out to get each other. You've just had a Tory MP leave the party because of this. We'll be probably doing a video about that soon, actually, probably the next one. But yeah, interesting times ahead for the Tory party. But to say that they are going to avoid civil war, absolutely not. The Tory party is in such a bad state that to solve any of their problems, have a leader who is strong enough, who is good enough to be able to go in and really start knocking some heads together. And that will mean having to have an internal fight with your MPs. If you cannot do that, then all these fracture points that we've been talking about that brought every single prime minister down is just set to bring any future leaders, any future prime ministers, which at this point is a long way off. Yeah, it's not going to happen anytime soon whatsoever. But why would a leader face a no confidence vote or even resign of their own volition? Leaving aside any hitherto unimagined scandals, I would get my teeth back in there. There are now, of course, 2 major reasons that we can imagine. First of all, a lack of support amongst MPs, or even a failure to make progress against Labour. Both would put a target on the leader's back. The former, of course, from day one, the latter now a bullseye that would grow with every mediocre poll. And yeah, he's right. And it's not just that. Remember, the two big tests, I don't know if Will bring this up, but the two very big tests will, of course, be local elections, which are next year, I think. And then, of course, you have the Welsh and Scottish parliamentary elections as well. Those will be two big tests. If you fail those, if you and you compact those other things as well, that you are losing your support amongst MPs and that you aren't gaining in the polls whatsoever when it compares to against Keir Starmer. And bear in mind, every single potential candidate, when asked, and this was in, Conservative Home that they reported this, every single candidate they are currently fielding loses to Keir Starmer in favorability rating. Like Keir Starmer's on like 40, almost 50%, and they're barely coming anywhere close to him. But apparently, according to Will, this government is eminently beatable. Yeah, delusions of grandeur all around for them on that one. So back to this. So both obviously explained why Duncan Smith, second amongst MPs in 2021, and of course still behind Tony Blair by the time the man in grey suits came circling in 2003, proved so vulnerable. Under the current leadership rules, the most obvious challenge of a leader, second amongst MPs, but first among members, is now a continual worry. History repeats itself. The first time as a tragedy, the second time as a farce. Oh, and it's gone beyond a farce at this point. It really has. But that's just the current state of the Tory party. It is not for Conservative Home to suggest to members that just because a candidate came first among MPs, members should pick them. If you do not think they are up for the job, you are free to vote against them. But you should do so with the consciousness that the tensions of that will create. MPs now also see far more of their colleagues than us, and one hopes that they are good judges of character. Says the MPs who, approved of Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Robert Jerrick in the leadership contest. The list goes on. Nevertheless, those tensions should not prove insurmountable. The greatest metric by which any Tory leader is, of course, judged is electoral success. And against this government, we are already winning local by-elections on big swings without a chief. So that's without a chief whip. I don't really think you have won any major by-elections. Like, local by-elections, okay, but by how much? What's he saying here? Hold on. Where is he taking us? This is an Express article. So Conservatives have gained 3 council seats in the countries in the last 2 days. So what was the swing? So 12% swing, 9 in that one. From the West End ward in Westminster, Worthing. 2 days ago, Gelding. Tories won in 2019 but lost in July. The Tories took the council ward with a 14% swing away from Labour. To be seen, that's not unusual. It's not unusual, to be honest, that you do these things, that you see these types of things. This happened to Boris Johnson losing local council elections. Of course, he won, the Hartlepool one. So we'll see. It is slightly worrying, but it's not cataclysmic, shall we say, on that. One suspects that there is not too much hankering now for the grand old days of Sunakinism, but a realization that voters have elected themselves a dud. Not really. I mean, you've barely, again, you calling Keir Starmer a dud, and yet he's barely been in power, but he's already kicked into motion more parliamentary bills than the previous Sunak government did. Just, something to bring up there, but there you go. In this case, the next leader should hope at least to be ahead within the polls within a relatively short span of time. Again, expecting to be ahead in the polls. Again, good. Well, it depends what they are saying, what they are doing. If it's someone like Robert Jerrick, who carries around huge baggage and all those skeletons of scandals in his closet, then yeah, good luck with that. So the longer they are not, either in weeks, months, and even years, the more question about their leaderships now can even appear. We could go even into the next election with a leader now unable to even overhaul administration can't even say it, unable to overhaul an administration as miserable as this. And that continues to leak voters now in multiples way. Will Nigel Farage obviously show up? Well, yes, he will show up. I think that's a guarantee on that. There's all kinds of stuff that could happen between now and the next elections. It's almost impossible, really, to predict what's going to happen at the next election at this stage of the game. So the twitch, of course, to switch horses will then begin. What will especially be clear is if a leader is behind on MP support in the first place, or they now construct a shadow cabinet made overwhelmingly of their supporters. Learn from Margaret Thatcher, not from Truss. Be comfortable appointing a top team that includes now your former rivals. We have too few MPs to leave candidates outside the tent. Yeah, and of course, eventually they're going to probably come for your head. Let's face it, Kimmy Badenoch has not shown any overwhelming loyalty. She didn't show any to Sunak, as far as we know. Why is any of these potential leadership candidates going to show loyalty to anyone who wins? Because as Conservative Home put on just a couple of weeks ago now, all these candidates lose in favorability rating as who they like as PM compared to Starmer. So there you go. Anyway, according to each leadership candidate, should now, of course, should also expect their willingness to serve under others, as we aim to now tease out in our interviews with them and even reach out to their teams and supporters. Airtime, bandwidth, the goodwill available to us are very limited. We should not waste it on falling out, as much as many tensions may simmer in a party of only just 121. And bear in mind that has already just happened. You've had an MP resign, which again we'll be getting to next video. If a candidate does prove electorally unappealing, natural questions of their competency will arise. To avoid reaching that stage, the next leader must keep the MPs and membership on side. As much as love and time must be doled out as possible, whilst communicating directly with voters of Labour's failures, our renewed sense of purpose, and the lessons we have learned. That should let me correct that for you. You haven't learned, because the Tories have not learned their lessons on this. Because at the moment, policy-wise, the Tories are not offering nothing different. At least Labour is offering something different, and they are doing something while actually being in power. They're not doing Sunak, who basically sat there and did nothing for almost a year and a half because he was so scared to put any bills forward because of potential rebellions. Does he bring that up? No. So let's finish this off. So to orient out now towards the voters rather than intra-party disputes or even pointless online silos, we have to prepare for the hustings, reception, speeches, and selfies by which the candidates will then be judged in Birmingham. Should each now bear in mind this is now a full meeting of members might be, they should only have to do it once before the next general election. Spare us a thought on the spin of the merry-go-round. No, you're going to be doing this again because the Tories have learnt no lessons. They are still wanting to infight because they've all got different ideas how they want to run the country, which again, very popular. They've got really no ideas. None of these candidates are putting forward any new substantial ideas to appeal to the current electorate. you know, just good luck. All I'm gonna say is, but yeah, you will be doing this merry-go-round spin again. You absolutely will. And I think even Will knows it. Because what will happen ultimately is you've got a membership base that really wants Kimmy Badnock. Then if she doesn't get to the final two, that gets squeezed out. Well, gee, your membership's really going to be annoyed at that. That's proven time and time again. That can be a very unpopular decision. And then we'll see what happens, because there's got to be, as I've said many times before, an internal look in the mirror, actual proper self-retrospective look at the Tory party, at their policies, their ideology. Have they done that at all? Not a single one of them has. And as long as they continue on this road, they are in for a permanent doom loop of just, losing and losing and losing. And it's not going to end up going well for them at all. But as always, let me know what you think down below. And of course, we'll see you all next time.